done with Dominic Butler, who is the lead gameplay designer, going into topics like weapons and gameplay features. Today we're going to be covering some smaller little tidbits of information, but things that I think are still important to know about Wildlands. Something that I spoke about in a previous video was the co-op nature of this game. Some people like to play open world shooters on their own to get a true single player experience. This is something we're seeing less and less of now from AAA developers, as there's always big cries from communities to create multiplayer environments instead. We've got a bit more confirmation on this for Wildlands now. As mentioned, it is a co-op shooter, but you will be able to play the game offline, with 3 AI characters filling the spaces that the rest of your buddies would have taken if you were playing co-op. This was confirmed recently by Kima, the community manager for the game, on their official forums. But unfortunately, at this time, we don't know if you'll actually need to have an internet connection to launch the game in offline mode. Sounds a little bit silly when you say, I need a connection to launch the offline mode, but this is something a lot of other games have done as an authenticity step to make sure it's a legitimate copy of the game. We don't have any information about that right now. Maybe we'll get more clarification as we approach a release. Next thing on my list of information that I've got here. AI Blue Fox, an established community member, he's a veteran of the franchise, has had access to the alpha build of the game. Ubisoft are using some of their most loyal players from past games for feedback here on Wildlands. And he's confirmed a nice welcome detail about the co-op layout of the campaign that you'll be playing through. He's confirmed that there's no tethering tying you to the rest of your co-op buddies, or the AI that might be taking their place. This means that you can go off and roam across the landscape and do whatever the hell you please, and then meet back up later again. As I said, this is a nice welcome feature, one that allows players to escape the storyline for a bit that devs build into these games, so they can just go off and do what they like. An open world game should be allowing you to explore the environment. And based on what they told us, because it's a co-op game, I kind of felt like they were going to sort of keep it very closed, very linear, and you had to stick to the story. But it is nice to see that there's going to be the options available for us to just go and roam and go and do some crazy stuff and then come back to the missions later. Following on from that, actually, it's worth noting that this no tether feature ties in quite nicely with the way that you can approach objectives in the game. You're simply given a target, and then it's 100% up to you and your mates that you're playing with to decide on how you want to attack it. Blue Fox also confirms some details on the flight mechanics of helicopters in the game. I know, right? Something fairly specific, but we'll probably take all we can get at this point. The controls apparently are very similar to GTA Online, which means a lot of people will find the transition into Wildlands fairly simple. And to be honest, the games do sound quite similar in their approach to missions, ranking, and activities as well. It's all down to the player as to how they really wish to proceed, what order they want to do things in. You can kind of carve your own path through the game. Onto the damage model now. Cortexian, who's another veteran community member, with his experience with the alpha, he's stated that around 5 to 6 shots in-game is needed to take somebody down. So obviously you're playing through the story missions here, you're needing to take out AI, it's going to take you about 5 or 6 bullets to do that. How does that sound to you? It seems to be following a model used in lots of other shooters out there, as opposed to mimicking what The Division has done recently, where you need a minigun full of rounds to take somebody down. I'm personally quite happy to see the damage as a bit more realistic, and a little bit more in line with what I would expect from a shooter game, but I will say this, it's taken from alpha testing, so this could completely change before it comes to release. Maybe they just need a little bit of feedback. I'm hoping in the future that we'll get to play a beta of this game to sort of get our hands on it before we start seeing too much more marketing material. Be nice to sort of see what they've got worked on so far. We could test that and then give them some good feedback on the game. And lastly, just before we end, IGN recently covered a story regarding some of the developers on Wildlands spending time with the Bolivian army in order to get a real sense of authenticity built into the game. For those that don't know, Wildlands is set in the high Bolivian plains, mixing in with jungles, mountains, grass areas, desert. It's all mixed in there. So it was quite interesting to know that they've actually spent some hands-on time with these people in the environment that the game is set in. Similar trips were set up for games like Far Cry 4 as well, and the authenticity there is, well, a little bit different. It is a fantasy game, but the environment that you played in was very immersive, so here's to hoping the developers on Wildlands can do even better. There you go, all up to date on Wildlands. I hope you enjoyed the video. Drop me a like if you did, or hit the dislike button if you didn't. Leave me some comments too. Let me know your thoughts on. This is a video that, I'll be honest, I really wasn't expecting to be making. Before E3, there wasn't much that Ubisoft had to offer, apart from The Division, that really tickled my fancy. But that was before they went and dropped this bombshell. Tom Clancy's Ghost Recon Wildlands. No one knew this was being announced, and that was much like their other game, For Honor, which was also a surprise to a lot of people. But what is even more surprising is that this game managed to capture my attention a lot more than other titles. I mean, things like Battlefront and Fallout 4 were, and probably still are, the games that I'm most interested from E3, but Wildlands is making that a trio now, and I thought I'd tell you a little bit about it because, well, I saw it and I'm really interested in it. So, the game will follow in the same footsteps, although fairly loosely at that point, that all other Ghost Recon games have in the past. They will take on the form of a third-person shooter, but the catch here is that it's entirely open world, and I think it's the first game in the franchise to do so. That's a fairly bold move right there. The game can be played entirely solo, but is designed to be a co-op shooter, with up to 4 players being able to group up and take on a massive variety of missions in different ways. The game will launch on PC, Xbox One and PS4, but no release date has been announced so far, although the game has been in development for 3 years already, so perhaps we aren't too far off. The story behind the epic scale, though, is one that's centered around a world of drug trafficking with the Santa Blanca drug cartel. They've taken the land, which has been modelled on like a fictional depiction of South America, and they've turned it into one intent on fueling the surrounding population with drugs, and that's all for profit. It's you and your ghosts, who in this are a group of US Elite Special Forces soldiers. It's up to you, it's your job to get behind the cartel and break up the supply of drugs and foil their operation, and to break its ties with the corrupt government ruling over the land. Now that's just the backstory, and it's only a small chunk of really what Ubisoft want to be able to achieve with this title, and that's pretty evident in the fact that they weren't letting slip a release date out of the conference either. A word of warning then, perhaps what you're seeing in the background is what we consider super pre-alpha gameplay, where it's likely once we start to see more of the game, we can be a little bit more confident in what we're seeing on the screens. It is all pre-alpha gameplay, by the way. There's nothing that's been announced in terms of any kind of beta or public showcase. As I said, no release date at all yet. The developers have stated that in completing different missions in different ways, the world around you will adapt and change too. As the game is open world, it's pitched that your AI that you can encounter, so that just kind of means civilians or people just living in the different villages around the map, are going to be going about their daily business as best as they can. So when you come bundling along through with, I don't know, a massive jeep with 4 people hanging out the back of it, they're going to react to what you're doing. The game also has a day and night cycle and a weather system, which you can see in the gameplay behind. They incorporate themselves in the missions too, so depending on what type of day it is in the map, that's not going to change for the missions. They're not structured in that way. The whole world is linked together, so if you decide to go into one of these missions in the middle of night, then it's going to be the middle of the night, and you might want to play the missions differently depending on the conditions that you find yourself in. That's pretty much all the solid information we have right now, because as I said, all this footage in the background is pre-alpha, and it could change. Like, literally everything could change before this game goes public. One thing that really stood out to me is how well the environment seemed to react to what you were doing in the game. I mean, in the first scene, which I'll show you right here, the way as soon as that sniper takes out the head of the cartel group, the chase, it starts straight away. You move out of the compound and straight into the desert. And while we're on that point, actually, this game looks absolutely amazing. Now, I'm gonna sort of take a little bit of a pinch of salt with this, because how many games have we seen in the last 2 years that have gone from looking absolutely amazing at these E3 conferences to looking not so great when they come out? I mean, I think Watch Dogs is probably the most infamous for that, and that was developed by Ubisoft, and more recently we can look at The Witcher 3, although the devs have now reactivated some of those higher level graphics for PC players, so it does show that they listen, but it doesn't mean that this is going to look exactly like that. But right now, it really did just grab me with the gameplay. It just looked seamless and really, really nice. The game is using a new engine though, and not the Snowdrop one that Ubisoft are using for The Division, which I thought might have been a natural choice, considering how long it's taken them to develop The Division, along with the engine to go with it. I would have thought they would have used that. It does look really, really nice, but this game was started over 3 years ago, so maybe the Snowdrop engine wasn't even in existence then. Anyway, I'll be keeping a close eye on this game moving forward, and I'll be brutally honest, this is where I thought Battlefield Hardline could have gone with its theme. Into drug cartels and wars set out in the South American wastelands. Well, it just looks like Ubisoft Paris got there first. Thanks very much for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video. Drop me a like if you... Last week, if you remember, I brought you some more information on Ghost Recon Wildlands, and you guys responded really well to it. Looks like you're really looking forward to this game. We looked at the new trailer and some of the vehicles that the game will give us the chance to play with, but today we're looking at the full map. Over the last few days on the Ghost Recon website, different cinematic shots have been released of the locations that we'll be playing in and trying to reclaim from the drug cartel. And alongside that, we now have a high-resolution full map to look at as well. The map was revealed in some promotional art for the different editions of the game, and it shows off all of the different landmarks, the key mission locations, as well as the different regions and environments that we get to play in. From the image there, you can see at least 3 different airports are on the map. We've got one in the far southeast corner near Libertad, one over in Barchevos region in the west, and one in the northeast Villaverde. Having 3 airports on one map surely means they can't just be there for areas for you to explore, possibly meaning air travel will be a big part of the game. Ubisoft have previously stated that this is going to be their biggest open world game ever, even beating out things like The Crew, which was just absolutely massive. So having airports might be a good way to actually get round the map nice and quickly. Alongside those airports, you'll also see marked on the middle of the map here an icon that's labelled MOB, and that stands for Main Operating Base. And where have we heard something like that before? As soon as I heard it, my mind jumped straight to The Division. Perhaps this is a central location where you and your other ghosts can come and set up camp and look to operate from, or maybe come back here at any time to stock up on supplies and orchestrate your next attack. Right now, we don't really have any information on what it is, but it does sound very similar to the base of operations in The Division. This one here on the south of the map is called Jaguar, and there's another one up in the far north, but I can't make out what it's called, but it is in the Media Luna region. So perhaps as you progress through the missions and visit different regions, you'll unlock more of these places as you move. Also, you'll see marked on the map are some mugshots of different members of the Santa Blanca drug cartel. the organisation that you'll be tasked with taking down and returning the land back to the Bolivian people. Now, these images are likely the location of the cartel members that are crucial to the story, and they'll need to be taken down one by one. From previous information, it seems there will be plenty more of these members to take down and eliminate, but the ones marked here seem to be the high-level ones. There's also a couple of interesting landmarks on the map here too. Up in the far north, we have Death Road, which many of you have probably heard of before. The old Top Gear team actually recorded an episode of them using the road to cross the country. And as the name might suggest, it really is one of the most dangerous roads in the world. You've got the train cemetery over in the northwest. We know there will be a full train network on the map, but the majority of it is actually run down and not used anymore. There's a couple more landmarks on there as well. Who knows what their significance is right now, but they're likely to do with the story. Beyond all of those locations on the map, the developers have dropped some stunning looking shots of some of the environments that will be in the game. I've been playing them in the background in between switching to the map. And first of all, let's look at the Salt Flats. This is a location that really intrigued me when I first saw it in the previous gameplay that's been released, and here we get to see a little bit more of it. It's the section of the map where the abandoned train yard is located, which is said to be one of the key locations for the drug cartel. Besides the flats, we also get a look at the Red Canyons, which again provides an awesome change of scenery. This thing in Wildlands, going for all these different environments, just seems to fit really well for me. I'm actually really excited to see how the gameplay changes depending on what region you're in. These ancient red cliff faces seem to go on for miles and miles, but they do get interrupted by some new infrastructure, like these giant bridges that are crossing the ravines below. All of this area can be explored, and let's hope there's plenty to discover out there. And finally, we get a closer look at the jungle grasslands, which provide a lot more cover than the previous two locations. This environment will provide a lot of water for you to traverse as well, and you'll be powering around in the boats that we saw in the recent trailer. This is where the drug war started, when the Bolivian people started to grow the coca plant. It looks really dense in there, which could make for some perfect cover when you're attacking a drug den. Hopefully we'll get to look at the snowy mountains and the desert locations soon. Once we get footage of that, I'll bring you an update right here on the channel. So, you're up to date with Wildlands again. Don't forget, E3, which is only a couple of weeks away now, will bring us some brand new gameplay and information on Wildlands, so stay tuned here and I'll bring you all the updates I can once we get them. Thanks very much for watching. Let me know what you think down below in the comments. I'm really excited, but I'm reserving my final judgment until we see gameplay at E3. I just want to be sure that the gameplay does live up to the visuals that we've seen so far. And while you're down there, drop me a like as well. But until next time, today we're going to look at Ghost Recon Wildlands again. A game that I'm personally really looking forward to, but one we haven't really heard very much about recently. It was revealed at E3 2015, much to everyone's surprise I might add, and then we were given a very general release date of 2016. But recently, Ubisoft and the developers dropped a little more info to whet our appetites just that little bit more. First up, the storyline and the main narrative of the game. We already know the game is going to be open world, but for those of you not familiar with the story, here goes. Set in the high Bolivian plains with a drug war raging on continuously, you're part of a US elite special forces team sent behind enemy lines to break the alliance between the cartel and the corrupted government. With this in mind, the story is set to be non-linear, so you can attack any of the locations marked at any point during the game. The game will be about damaging the cartel's influence on the land that you play in, so whatever you end up doing will have an effect on how the story plays out. According to Dominic Butler, lead gameplay designer on Wildlands, the end goal of each mission is set in stone, but it's 100% up to the players as to how they want to get there. You can go for the stealth route, scout out the base from afar and then silently infiltrate from the rear, That's what she said. And then get out without attracting any attention, or you could just try the good old fire and forget sequence and go in all guns blazing. Next, the co-op nature of the game. Ubisoft have built the game to centre around 4 players at all times, although this doesn't mean that you have to have 3 other real-world players to fill the missions. Any empty slots are filled by AI. So if you wanted to play solo, you could, and the other 3 roles will be filled by a computer-controlled character. Or if you were playing with your buddy, then the other 2 roles would be filled by the computer as well. If I'm honest, I'm not 100% sure I really like this idea. In practice, I'm sure it makes more sense, as the game has likely been balanced around those 4 attacking figures, but it almost seems like they're adding these extra players to help guide you through the world. For more experienced players, or people who just want to play on their own, I would like to see an option to turn this AI off, just to give players some choice. Moving on now to the camera view. And I'm sure it hasn't escaped your notice that this game is a third-person shooter. The choice has been made based on the tactics used in the game, and the roleplay of the Special Forces soldier fitted that third-person view a little bit better. This way, you'll not only be able to detect those threats coming towards you, but from multiple angles as well. There are hints of first person in the game though. On occasion you are able to enter a first person state to use the iron sights of a weapon, and apparently this is to complement the faster and more furious moments available in the game. Next, and this is always a good talking point, the enemy and passive AI. According to Ubisoft, it's not laid out paths for these characters at all, and they will adapt to the situation that they're in. For example, it'll use items nearby to attack you, use vehicles randomly to get the jump on you, and if you're not paying attention, will attempt to flank you and take you out when you least expect it. I guess we will have to wait and see really how clever this AI is and if it's really that good, but the intent of the idea does sound very promising. And finally, we have customization and weaponry. There will be lots of opportunities for you as the player to kit out your character as you see fit. There'll be clothing options and physical appearance changes, along with the equipment that you use. The lead designer specifically mentioned items like C4, flares, mines and grenades, all of which can be switched out depending on what situation you find yourself in. There will be a loadout system for weapons as well, but there wasn't any detail given towards that. Not really much more was mentioned in the update, and that's understandable. The team making the game don't want all of these details leaking out too early. But as I mentioned earlier, I am massively looking forward to this game, and the information released the other day certainly has given me hope. At least the game is somewhat like the idea that I currently have in my head. A couple of decisions and comments remain to be fully answered, but I'm sure after the new year and the further that we get into 2016, the more information we'll end up getting. Thanks very much for watching. I hope you enjoyed it. If you missed my first look video of Ghost Recon Wildlands, then that's linked on the third line of the description and in the outro for you, so you can go check it out. And don't forget to leave me some comments. Let me know what you think of Ghost Recon Wildlands. Is it piquing your interest, or is there another open world game out there by Ubisoft, Far Cry Primal, that's got your interest a little bit more? And while you're down there in the comments,